Hey everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to another Roll20 review, my written and video review series where I take a look at the marketplace section of online role-playing website Roll20.net. In this video, I'll be reviewing the D&D 5e supplement Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, designed by Wizards of the Coast for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. A review copy has been provided for the purposes of this review. If you enjoy my videos, consider supporting me via patreon.com/RogueWatson. Shoutouts to Platinum patrons Joe, Will, Tiny Dancer, Manuel, Basil, Huskar124, Wizard Princess, my favorite D&D player, Christopher, Dave, and By Inspection. And gold patrons RPG Papercrafts, Charming Grenade, Pretty Boy, Numa, Marcos, Dave, Vicente, Gilberto, Shani, K, Cert, Tubi, Adam, Ted, Lizard Lounge, Sam, Ross, Limpy Spuds, Jerome, Fatboy619, Splania, Nick. Thank you all very much for your support. If you're hoping for a meaty breakdown of individual subclasses and everything that's included in here, that's really not what I'm going to do. I'm going to provide kind of an overview of my thoughts on Tasha's and how it is implemented in Roll20 specifically. So first, let's go over what you get if you purchase Tasha's Cauldron of Everything via the Roll20 module. You get the compendium editions, which means everything becomes integrated into your compendium, which is all of your Roll20 games. You get the interactive puzzle add-on with over 50 magic items and a dozen puzzle handouts and diagrams, as well as several of the interactive maps, which I'll show you in a moment. That add-on, by the way, must be added to a game, but it can be added to any existing game. Once you've created it, there's a whole drop-down menu list for add-ons. You can just select Tasha's, and boom, you'll get what I'm going to show you right here in the journal. It's under Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. And finally, get the player token pack with 33 tokens and player handouts, and that is located in the art library. So you get the compendium, the journal, and the art library, and this is what these look like, which is, again, if you've purchased anything on any of the major modules in Roll20, you will get this, which they take all the character art and turn them into handouts that you can just show your players, and actually turn them into individual tokens in case you wanted to use any of the art in Tasha's, which it's all really good art. Tasha's Cauldron from Everything honestly has one of my favorite just art pieces that I've seen in any official 5e book, and I think the art in 5e throughout the years has been absolutely fantastic, and this is probably one of my favorite books from just a pure art standpoint. The character art is really good, the environmental art, it's just, it's very, very just awesome, and unfortunately you don't necessarily get that from the Roll20 module because it's not really presented in necessarily a book format. It's integrated into the compendium, which means you can just kind of search for things as you need them. So you kind of really miss that, flipping through the pages and seeing all the wonderful art stuff. It just doesn't translate terribly well. Same thing for the art library. We're only getting these handouts and tokens. By the way, I apologize if you hear a bunch of crickets chirping in the background right now. My toads are not eating the dinner quite fast enough. Thank you for that, toads. So that's what you get with Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. It's basically, similar to Xanathar's Guide to Everything in that it is a supplement that expands on, rules for DMs as well as player options. So we get new subclasses, we get a little bit of rules on creating your own custom race or switching your race ability scores around. We get some new spells, some new magic items, and the DM tools are like adding like details on sessions, which is very odd. It took this many years to get like firm, like, oh, by the way, you should use a session 0 with, and here's some safety rules you should probably use. That I think they call it a social contract, which is very important, but it's just weird it took us this long to get there. Notes on using supernatural regions, which is very cool. This is all stuff that, again, is included in the compendium, and we can look at it. I especially want to talk about the subclasses, because that is a huge focus of this book, similar to Xanathar's, and I think Tasha's Cauldron of Everything has way better subclasses than Xanathar's does. They are way more interesting and just plain cool. I mean, the rogues, we get the Phantom Rogue, which is all about having like ghostly death powers. The Psyblade, or what's it called, Soul Knife, where you basically like Psylocke from X-Men. You can manifest this psychic blade. The Fighter can be a Psy Warrior, so you can have telekinetic abilities and shields and things. The Barbarian can rage and create a wild magic effect around them, or go bestial and gain claws and a tail. The Artificer has 4 subclasses, and all 4 of them are freaking cool as hell. They can throw down like flamethrower turrets and become like Iron Man, just like magic mech suits. You've got the Alchemist, who can create potions, although you don't know what the effect is until you until you're actually drinking it, and where you could just wield a powerful firearm or have a robot pet buddy. Like, there's so many cool things with the Artificer. But all of that, most of that, I think the Armorer wasn't, but the Artificer and 3 subclasses was included in Eberron Rising from the Last War, which only just came out last year. Now, if you're not interested in Eberron and you missed that book, then I guess having the Artificer in here is nice. But that is something to realize, is that literally is basically copy and pasted from Eberron Rising from the Last War. And that's not the only piece of content that was copied from there. The other one is pretty much an entire chapter of Tasha's, which are the group patrons, which is a really neat concept where it's essentially a way of tying your group together. Because one of the biggest awkward things about starting a new D&D game is like, well, you've got all these diverse heroes from wildly different backgrounds. You could have like this demon wizard and this aquatic fighter, and just like, why are I wanted to play together. Well, why are they really together, like in universe in the game? Group patrons helps to where it creates that reason. You can all work for a crime syndicate or a journalism. You can be newspaper. You can work for a guild. You can work for a religious order. You're all working for one thing, which I think is a really good way of creating that opening plot device of like, why are we working together? And we need you need the quest giver, and that's that can be your faction that you're working for. And it basically replaces the factions that D&D tried to start with in 5th edition, like the Harpers and the Lords Alliance and all that. I mean, those factions still exist, but in terms of like really functioning what they should do, which is kind of ascending in the ranks and getting perks and being able to use a base of operations, I think Group Patrons actually does that better. But Group Patrons was introduced in Eberron Rising from the Last War. The only difference here is it divorces the in-universe Group Patrons from, obviously, the Eberron world, and just creates more of a generic stuff. So instead of it being from the certain criminal syndicate or from the certain Wizard Academy, it's just called Academy and Crime Syndicate here, so you can use that kind of without necessarily having to be in Eberron. But for somebody like me who was really interested in Eberron, reviewed that book, and really liked that content, yes, I like seeing it here, but I just saw it last year in Eberron Rising for the Last War, so that's less impressive for me to see. Subclasses, though, are very, very, very good. And I can show you the advantage of having the subclasses in Roll20. If we're going to make a new character, then we can use the character monster. We'll call them character monster, which, if you don't know what that is a tool to help you build your character essentially every time you level up, and also creating them at level 1. You can use the character monster. So by purchasing all the supplements in Roll20, they are integrated in here when you're making your character sheet. So unfortunately, due to the way that my capture software works, you can't tell that I'm actually clicking on this drop down menu and choosing a race, so you'll have to bear with me until I actually pick one. But for example, I can choose a tiefling, and it updates that, shows it all in here. Now, Tasha's does add the custom lineage, which shows up as Tasha's custom lineage, which allows you to essentially create your own race, but it's honestly pretty disappointing. I was hoping for more expanded rules on this, of being able to, maybe kind of a point buy system with picking up traits and abilities, or something unique to creating your own custom race or character whose background, maybe you're this race but you're raised in this race, because you pick and choose abilities. That's not really what you can do here. Instead, they let you essentially change your ability score to whatever you want, which is a start at least, because let's face it, you can still make a 20 strength halfling. It's just how do you get there and make it a little bit better and easier to start with that character concept. And I think you can choose like your own feat or something, and that's about it. So essentially, you can have a variant human be whatever race you want. That's not terribly exciting, but that is an option. But when it comes to class, this is where all the Tasha stuff comes into play. So I can choose, for example, the Artificer, obviously TCE for Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. So all that stuff is built into the character monster already. So let's say we want to make an Artificer real quick. I'm just going to pick some random stuff and go through the motions. And it's probably going to yell at me because I skipped some stuff on the actual race chart. Let's see, you are an intelligence, right? So let's go. Some good mental stats. What did I leave off? Strength, there we go. Background is whatevs. I've got a bunch in here from all kinds of things. Player handbook, again, if you've got Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica, any of that stuff, that's what the supplements will do, is they will appear in here. Let's just go class equipment is fine. I'm trying to get to the end. Cantrips. What did I choose? A spellcasting class. They're always going to take longer. Oh yeah, the new spells like Tasha's Caustic Brew are going to be in there. Everything from the supplement is included. We don't have any feats yet. Bio. Character Monster is a great name. We're going to roll with it. Let's just apply changes. And it will create my level 1 character sheet with all the things in there. I don't know if it'll have my weapon stuff in there. I don't think I chose my weapons, which I should have done. Okay, it gave me a light crossbow. And it already put some of the combat, related abilities in there. All the artificer opening stuff is already there and ready to go. The other option you can do, because it's in the compendium, is I can make a character. Let's call them Testy McTestface. And I can just drag and drop, if I go to edit sheet directly, and let's say I want to make a barbarian. Let's see, that's the one I can remember, Path of the Beast. And we can just drag and drop this stuff in here, and it will include it as a subclass, but then I have to go and include it as all of the individual abilities. It's a bit more of a pain in the ass, but it's at least an option. So the actual trait is called Form of the Beast, which has to be searched separately, and then you can take this and I believe drag it onto here, and then see it appears under the character sheet right here, Form of the Beast. So you can individually drag and drop. Because I own that supplement in Roll20, all that stuff is available in the compendium, and it's easiest just to search if you already know, but obviously you can click on this and see all the subclasses. This will include everything that you've got. And you can click on that, you can open it up, and it's basically the exact same stuff. Here's where you get the art from Tasha's already in Roll20, which is nice. I mean, if you're playing primarily on Roll20, you're probably going to want this stuff in here. And I do really like a lot of these subclasses. They add some really, really fun stuff. The Warlock can summon a tentacle. That's the Fathomless Warlock. I love the Ranger Swarm Keeper with having like insects or little fae or something. Let's see, what was another good one? The Druid Circle of Spores, which was almost like the Cordyceps from like The Last of Us, where you could like animate zombie versions with your mushroom spores, were pretty cool. The College of Creation Bard, you could create like items and animate things, really neat. Just really cool ideas. Wizard Blade Singing. I mean, a lot of these most of them, I think, were just unearthed arcana that have now become officially, published adventures. And it goes a little bit further and adds a lot of new expanded character abilities and concepts, like the Druid Battlemaster gains new maneuvers. Clerics and paladins can use their channel divinity to regain regain spell slots, kind of giving them that like arcane recovery from wizards. I believe these are all optional abilities. I mean, your DM has to sign off on it, obviously, but they give a lot of players a lot more options and abilities. And including let's see if I can find the Ranger optional class features. And the Ranger gets the biggest one. This is all the stuff from Tasha's, because obviously we all know the Ranger is very severely undercooked and a little bit underused because of it's kind of weaker compared to the other classes, and that's kind of been a problem. The Unearthed Arcana Revised Ranger tried to help that by boosting a lot of the abilities, making them more combat applicable, because the reason is a lot of people just don't use that aspect of exploration. They don't use having to track things and go overland, and that can change a lot, whereas other classes, none of their stuff gets underused in that way. But I don't think the Ranger actually goes quite far enough, and I really hate how they try to do favored foe by making it be concentration, and you have limited uses of it per long rest. I think that's BS. I don't know why they're so afraid to give the Ranger just a little bit of a buff. The easiest thing to do is to, it sucks to nerf powerful, anything. You don't want to take things away from players, but you could definitely buff them, and I think the Ranger definitely deserved a buff here. Didn't quite get it if you were looking for that. I still think the UA Ranger is the way to go, although with all these optional class features, I would now be thinking, well, damn, maybe I need to not allow the UA Ranger and instead try and work this one in, and maybe just work on modifying that one, but a little bit disappointing in that regard. So I really like the subclasses. That's a good part of Tasha's. The other main thing I can show, we've got magic items are included in here. If you add the optional add-on to to any game, then it will add it as this separate drop down, which is right here under Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. It'll be, what I did is I created my own game and just added Tasha. So that's why you're only seeing this, you're only seeing these things. If I started my own game, Tomb of Annihilation or something, then you would see all of the stuff added after that. It just adds to it as an add-on. So basically all you get are all of the magic items, which are individually itemized as handouts. That's cool, except only a few of them actually have artwork to go with them, which is true of the book. Not all the magic items have artwork. A lot of the items tend to... So Xanathar's, it was a lot of common and uncommon items, especially common, to try and expand like lower level magic item options. Tasha's kind of goes in the opposite direction, which I think is a good way to do it, in that it focuses a little bit on the higher level content. So we got a lot of like legendary items and artifacts. There's a magical tarot deck. There's a abyssal like demon. I can't even say that. It's the Necronomicon, but a demon version of that. And like at one point, there's a giant like 10-foot tall mech suit that players can jump in and pilot around. Like just really high level, crazy, powerful stuff, which I think is a cool thing to do. There's magical tattoos you can get that have different abilities. I think that's a fun concept. I don't think you need all of these added to your game at once. They all appear in the compendium. Like you can just search whatever item that you need, and it will appear, what is that, Atlas of something? And it should appear as, right there. So you've got it built in. You can just drag that into your game as you need it. You don't need all those magic items in here. In fact, that's probably just going to slow your game down with all the magic items you're not going to use. Now, the puzzles is another big thing. It only takes up like the last, 10 or 15 pages of Tasha's. It's cool that they added puzzles in here. Long sigh. I don't think the puzzles are particularly noteworthy, honestly, and I know it's really hard to design good puzzles. I totally admit that. Ask literally any game designer. It is hard to design good puzzles. D&D, I really try to think of as a video game and not an escape room. Now, if you want to play a D&D game that is basically an escape room, barely using character sheets, no combat, I think that'd be a cool thing to do. But in the average D&D game where we're trying to balance combat and role-playing and exploration includes puzzles, and that's only one part of it. And it's, think of it like a video game where you're just, you fought your way through a dungeon, maybe you chatted with some, a prisoner or something, and then you come across a puzzle. You don't want to spend a super long time on that puzzle, right? You don't want to get stuck there. So it's tricky to make it not be just completely stupid and be like, oh, well, I instantly know what to do, but also you don't want your players to be completely stuck and throw up their hands. It's like, well, can we just make skill checks like that? And what's funny is that in the puzzle explanations, they even say like, hey, you can make skill checks to get hints and things. Well, once your players start making skill checks, you've failed in your puzzle design, unfortunately. They're not all bad, but they're not very... I wasn't particularly impressed. Honestly, I thought a lot of the puzzles in like Tomb of Annihilation were better, and you can look at those puzzle designs from especially the Omu shrine, like the final chapters, the shrines in Omu, and a lot of the puzzle rooms in the Tomb of the Nine Gods have some pretty neat, interesting puzzles or mechanics about them that I think would satisfy a lot of players. I don't think a lot of them just, they do the classic thing of just ripping off, like Reckless Steps is just ripping off the Indiana Jones Last Crusade thing. Some of them are just so stupid, like just counting the number of letters in words, even though the words are numbers, as a back and forth call. Like, it's just, there's some dumb stuff going on there. I do like that Roll20 at least went a step further. I was hoping they would do this, and they did, with creating interactive puzzle maps. So if you add the add-on to your game, these are just included as pages, and then in the actual physical book, and then they're included as handouts that I guess you could scan and copy this page and print it out or something. But this is obviously, if you're running in Roll20, this is the way to go about. And as you can see, fully interactable. These are all in the GM layer, but you can obviously add them to the players, and it gets really, really fun. And I know this from doing Tomb. If you can give your players something that they themselves can manipulate on actual like tokens on the map or something, and I wish I was doing I would love to do more of that, because even if it's a mediocre puzzle, if you can create a visual, I was going to say physical, but we're playing digitally on Roll20, but still, if you create that visual medium where you can see the puzzle and interact with it, you really draw all the players together and you can pour over it, kind of if you were opening one of those, escape room box games, but you don't want to make it as this big, cryptic, complex, escape room type puzzle, because that's not what you're doing the entire time, unless you are running an escape room D&D game, then go nuts. But I do think this is very cool, and this is a neat thing that Roll20 provides with having these interactive puzzles. I wish the puzzles themselves were better. I don't think they're particularly memorable, and unfortunately you would have to obviously change them, because a lot of people are going to be looking at these puzzles and seeing immediately what the solutions are and how to do them, so you would at least have to change the numbers you're using or the patterns or something, even if you want to use the same thing. But you could use the same concept. In other words, just change what the actual solution is, and I think that would be doable. For example, this one, you could just let your players draw on the map, and that would open up the numbers that they would see before them. That's a very kind of escape room thing to do. But this one, at least, if you make them very obvious, it's even if your players solve it in 10 minutes or something and just talk about it, it's a cool thing. It just breaks up the action. So I'm on the fence of always making your puzzles easier than what you think, unless you really know your players and they're really hardcore into puzzles, or you're thinking man, we just haven't, we're just going to focus on this puzzle for the session. Maybe you can go a little bit more complex than that, but just be very careful about doing puzzles. That's my own little rant. But I think that is nice, and having all these puzzles in here is cool. If you're going to run these puzzles, then you definitely want to include that add-on into your games. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't even bother doing it and just dragging all that stuff from the compendium as you need it. Obviously, it's built into the character monster. And then you've got all these tokens, which I guess I can show. I have to use this map because I don't have a map. Where you can literally drag these tokens from the art gallery. It defaults to being gigantic. And then you can use that as a person's new character if you wanted to. So, and the art in Tasha's is very, very good. Like I mentioned, this is some of the best art I've seen Wizards produce. So I imagine people would definitely want to use these tokens and their associated handouts. So that's pretty cool. It's all very good, but notice how there is no adventure here. And Xanathar's Guide to Everything in the Roll20 module did include an Adventures League module, which was thematically tied to Xanathar's. It was a really, really cool one-shot where, I guess spoilers for, what was the name of it? Underworld Speculation, I believe was the name of the module. So brief spoilers for that, but it had to do with the Xanathar's fishbowl and his fish. And basically, the one shot was or I guess it had to be a one shot, but you woke up in a cave and you went out and there's water and there's a whole underwater area and Twilight Zone twist. You're inside the fishbowl and you have to escape. You've been miniaturized. It's a really, really cool idea. You don't get anything here. There's no adventure included or nothing, despite still being priced the same as a full-on 5th edition campaign, the size of Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frost Maiden, Out of the Abyss, all of those adventures. Tasha's is priced the same, and I don't usually comment on the pricing, but that I think is BS. I do not think this has nearly the same level of content, obviously, because a lot of what we want with the Roll20 content is we want maps and we want tokens. Obviously, having the journal stuff is good too, but this doesn't even have a whole lot of that in the journal. It's just magic items and the puzzles. There is no reason this should be priced the same as those. This is a supplement that expands on rules and adds really fun classes that I like, but it doesn't include any maps, and these interactive puzzle elements are a cool bonus, but there's just... I do not like the fact that this is priced the same as all those other actual, full-on 5e campaigns. All right, let's go over my pros and cons for Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. Pros: fun subclasses that add distinct and unique abilities, like the Rogue Soul Knife, the Fathomless Warlock, and the Astral Monk. Pro: fantastic artwork and hilariously snarky sidebars. Unfortunately, you kind of, as I mentioned, you lose some of that if you're not actually reading the physical book, because you'd have to be searching for that specific thing, and then it pulls up the nice artwork and has the quote from Tasha and everything, whereas if you're flipping through the book, you're going to get all that. So there is a bit of lost in translation stuff going from the digital version of a supplement, whereas if you're buying an adventure book, you're reading through all the journal entries and you're getting all that content. So it's really good, but it's weird to put that even as a pro, because you don't really get to see a lot of that in the Roll20 version. Pro: support for higher level content with more legendary magic items and supernatural environments. I kind of glossed over the environments, but they're really fun D100 tables of like haunted regions and far realm regions and all these different, you know, even if you're not necessarily on like that different plane of existence or something, it just creates a more dynamic and interesting and hazardous region to be in, which to me is a high level thing that instantly can transform a, you know, relatively normal area or dungeon crawl into suddenly a higher level area by introducing that region. I think those are actually very, very good and well done. And pros, the interactive puzzle pages. That is a nice bonus that Roll20 provides, and I think despite my misgivings about the puzzles, I'm glad that they are included here. Cons, the biggest one for me is it's overpriced. It is just overpriced for Roll20. It should not be the same price as a you know, Tomb of Annihilation or Storm King's Thunder or something. There's not the content here for that. It's what's there is pretty good, but it should not be the same. Cons, disappointingly bare custom race rules. As I mentioned, I was really hoping that we would get some more intriguing, interesting stuff for building our own race or being able to swap traits around or changing things, you know, if you were raised by one or the other. Instead, it's just, hey, do you want to create your own race? Well, you just follow the rules for Variant Human, and if you want to swap your ability score, then just do that. It was all of 2 pages long. Like, that sucks. And cons, honestly, I put the puzzle design as a con. I expected more. I really did. Like, I know it's hard to make really fun, interesting puzzles, especially trying to come up with new ones that aren't just kind of the same classic puzzle designs over and over again, but I expected more. I expected some more interesting puzzles to use that weren't either just really dumb or were incredibly obtuse to where I was like, hell no, this is not going to work in this in an average D&D game. Final verdict, creative and fun subclasses do the heavy lifting in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, which features only the bare minimum of content on Roll20. Thank you to everyone for watching this video review. You can see my written review at roguewatson.com. You can support my work at patreon.com/roguewatson. You can follow our own D&D adventures here on my YouTube channel. Thank you.